up. How does that actually happen? Are there little like
Oh,
minions?
well, like they start to almost kiss, and they like get this close, and they're like, "What do you think? Should we? I don't know."
It's like a will they, won't they?
Yeah, it's a real moonlighting situation. Oh, look at that! We are live, so we're gonna get this started in 3, 2. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
And we are coming to you from a couple of different places on the internet. We're live over on Crowdcast. We're live on YouTube. Or maybe you're getting us wherever you get podcasts. Wherever that is, that's cool. We love it. And what's cooler is we got a brand new show for you tonight. Usually we're running repeats, right, Justin?
Yeah, exactly. It's rerun season. We got to take summer vacation. We just put on the old algorithm, and it just chatters us up.
Every once in a while, we pop in with a clip show, and that's pretty much it.
I remember when Pete and I got in that one argument.
Speaking of which, unfortunately, Pete is going to be off this week, but hopefully should be back next week. But why don't we kick it off, as we always do here on our comic book show, talking about liquor. I don't know, it's become a thing we do, but
It's become a thing. And please, I don't know if it was a result of the pandemic, but we slowly have focused increasingly on the alcohol we're consuming over the course of the show. So if you have a take on that, please let us know.
Yeah, positive or negative, that's fine. We were actually talking about this in person.
That's
this
right.
past
I saw
weekend.
Alex in person this weekend.
Yes, which was very nice. We were talking about this a little bit offhand because we haven't seen each other since the beginning of the pandemic, right?
That's right. And I was like, Alex, you look like you've a different height. And you were like, your voice sounds weird. I was like, yeah, because you're hearing it in your ear.
Yep. Yeah, you were actually not directly coming into my ear holes, so there you go. But now we're back to normal, and this is much more comfortable.
Oh, God, I can't imagine seeing you again.
But the cocktail that we are drinking this week actually comes from this weekend's festivities. My wife graduated from grad school, so we were looking up. I did a very deep dive research. I Googled graduation cocktail. And the first result...
What? That's how you got that? You're crazy. You're a crazy person.
Yeah. We did ditch a couple of other things that were like a little too complicated or whatever. But we found this thing called Charleston Fizz, which is super delicious. So this is the drink that we're doing this week. It is grapefruit, Saint Germain, which is an elderflower liqueur, a little bit of simple syrup, the gin, and then also use some muddled tarragon with it, and you shake it with that. Very refreshing, really good, highly recommended. Definitely check it out. Not comic book themed in any way, but
no, yeah, let's not. We can't do that. Eventually, we're just going to be reviewing alcohols and having alcohol guests on it.
I mean, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Truth.
Yes, but we do actually have some comic book guests before we pivot over to being a liquor podcast full time. And we have some great ones this week. So I'm going to bring in our first two guests here. They are the creators of the new Image Comics book, Blood-Stained Teeth. Great new vampire riff.
Yes.
Christian Ward and Patric Reynolds. We got Patrick here. I think Christian's going to take a second because his stream needs to travel from the other side of the pond all the way over the Atlantic Ocean, so that slows things down a little bit.
The jet stream
exactly. But Patrick, thank you so much for being here. First of all, I love your display in the background. You got the whole blood-stained teeth in the back thing going on.
I decided, I should have some kind of production going on besides just my studio and all my terrible drawings in the background. So I figured, let's do something kind of professional that looks cool for once.
Yeah.
So
it looks great. And also, this book looks great and is great. The second issue is coming out tomorrow, if I remember correctly. We got a preview of it. It's awesome. It really amps up the action in a big way. I won't spoil anything about it, but to take it back to basics while we're waiting for Christian to come in here as well, why don't we talk about the concept of the book? Why don't you give the pitch, if you don't mind?
Well, basically, when Christian pitched it to me, it started out with the idea that there is this vampire named Atticus Sloan who bites people for money, and
good work.
But the payment is $10,000, but also he gets 10% of your earnings throughout your life. And within this sort of world of Atticus Sloane, there's this higher council of firstborn vampires that sort of rich vampires that sort of run everything. So like the media, pharmaceuticals, politics, that kind of thing. And so I thought, oh, so it's basically like nonfiction. Sounds great.
Yeah.
It sounds something we're very familiar with. So
yeah, what's more terrifying about the concept, the blood sucking or the pyramid scheme aspects that you have here?
Can it be both? My God.
I think it is. I mean, it technically is both, but
yeah.
I was just going to ask you about the look of the book, particularly again. Oh, here's Christian. Hello,
hey,
you did it. I tried to time it out correctly, knowing that you got the spinning wheel of death earlier on, but it didn't work. But Christian, welcome as well. We already got the pitch out of the way, so you're good. We'll kick you out of the stream and just talk to Patrick about the book. Well, before we do move over to the art, because I do want to ask about that, Christian, now that you're here, where did the initial germ of this idea come from? And specifically, I'm curious because, as I'm sure you're well aware, as I'm sure everybody's aware, there's been a kabillion different vampire riffs, but this is something that feels very fresh, feels very different. How difficult was it to whittle down to an idea where you're like, okay, this actually is something that is new?
Well, I mean, I think kind of really, I mean, the initial idea of the vampire for hire, Atticus Sloane, which I've just heard Patrick give you the pitch on. I mean, that came to me a couple of years ago. And then I kind of sat with it for a bit. And I had this, the concept, but not really the story. And it's really, the story came from the last 2 years and kind of being stuck at home and kind of going through the pandemic and kind of having kind of what's important being kind of shown to us, the idea of kind of like society and kind of being kind to your neighbor and being kind of like a unit together. And then seeing people like Jeff Bezos, their money going up and up and up and up, well, while we're all kind of locked in and people are kind of struggling with money and continue to struggle with money. And it just hit me that really billionaires are vampires. They feed off us drip, 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 and that's how they accrue their wealth. And the minute that kind of penny dropped, I realized that the two things were connected, the idea of commerce, and that really, if you looked at the idea of a vampire in a modern world, blood wouldn't be the issue. We give blood to blood banks. It would be really easy for a vampire to get blood. What wouldn't be easy would be the idea of funding their immortality. They're around for a long time and, they have wealth and they want to live a particular way. And once I kind of realized that, the kind of the reality of that, those two things slotted together and the story kind of organically formed from those two ideas.
Yeah.
I really like that explanation too, because it's like so much of vampire stories is like, you wouldn't believe it. These guys drink blood. And it's like, we know, we've seen hundreds of them. To be like, no, the real issue, the drinking blood thing is, that's a sideshow. Imagine having to retire on that lifestyle. It's great.
I mean, one other thing that I'll throw out that I really liked about the first issue in particular, and again, I'm not going to get into spoilers for the second issue, but we read a lot of comics on this show, and particularly I feel like Image Comics almost have this format of we're setting up this world, we're setting up the world, and last page, here's the concept. And there's definitely a big concept that does get set up at the end of the first issue here, but also the first issue feels like this adventure in and of itself inside of the world. So how cognizant of that were you when you were crafting the kickoff to the world of this book?
Hugely. I mean, for me, there's world building and then a story. And the story is when you break the world building. So you create the world and then it's all about tension, right? And things being broken. That's what a story is. It's things being broken, whether that be a relationship, whether that be kind of, bones. And it's how those things get mended and how you get through that kind of adversity. So really it was, I love stories where a world is created, the concepts we're introduced to, and then that gets shifted, and that's where the excitement of the story is. So really, it was very clear to me that I had to set up the parameters of this world and how the rules worked before I subverted them, because otherwise you've got nothing to kind of like, there's no tension if you don't know what the contrast is.
Patrick, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about putting together the visual world of the book, because I think it's not just you, it's also the colors by Heather Moore as well work so seamlessly together, and it builds this very surprising look for the world. Like, it's not the arch gothic thing that you necessarily expect from a vampire tale. It's more colorful. It's more newsprinty at points. You're playing around with form. So I know I'm feeding you a lot of stuff here, but take it away.
Well, like what Christian said, we mentioned like world building. Like once I had the concept and like the sort of parameters that he set up, I wanted to make sure that that everything had a very distinct character, not the characters themselves, honestly, but also like the environments and also the settings. So I wanted to make sure there was a certain personality to everything that I drew, and like that personality sort of was very tangible. So there's a lot of structure to the work that I draw. Like Atticus Sloane's apartment, for example. I wanted to make sure I had like I wanted to make sure I want to do like a modern day vampire's castle. So I thought, okay, he's sort of like this greedy guy who loves money. So I thought, okay, I wanted to make it a high rise, but I didn't want it to be like just a regular high rise. And so I sort of researched all of these abandoned skyscrapers. It's particularly in South America. There was this one called the Tower of David. That's this skyscraper that was built, but it was abandoned like midway through construction, and it's become like that, like the tallest slum in the world. People have just sort of moved in and sort of made it their home, but it has this look like it's this sort of symbol of decay and capitalism. I thought that is my vampire's castle right there for this story, So it's sort of there's all those elements, these gothic elements too, but it's like tinged with the sort of failure of capitalism and greed, And so I think when I set up an environment or an establishing shot, I think about that first. I think about like what kinds of personality that's going to have and how our characters fit into that too. And then the challenge, of course, is to like make sure the characters also display Christian's ideas on their faces too. And so they also are telling us what they're feeling on their face without. So I have to make sure like the characters act very clearly and very well. And but that also starts with, and that's why I choose to go something with more that has more realism to it, because I think it sort of helps immerse the reader in the believability of the story too, and it makes them a little bit more emotionally relatable. So sometimes I'll start with, when we were designing Atticus Sloane, we started a lot with Christian thought, okay, he's sort of our David Bowie analog. So I thought, okay, so I started looking at David Bowie, and then maybe a little bit of Robert Pattinson, because he has that slim kind of look to his face. And so we kind of landed on Atticus Sloane was kind of like a combination of David Bowie's Thin White Duke phase and Lucifer from Wicked and the Divine, with a little bit of arrogance, and who was also super into like wearing 70s suits. So he's sort of like he isn't a cool person, but he thinks if he surrounds himself with a bunch of cool things, he will be cool. And so there's a little bit of vulnerability to him too that I kind of like. And so I made him a little thinner and maybe a little more wispy, And so like that level of thought is sort of like what I go to when I design characters. I want all that stuff to sort of be apparent, and hopefully it's come across in the book, for people to see.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like we're talking about decay. It feels like that versus the immortality of vampires, and I feel like the art sort of all the faces are super vivacious, but the world itself behind them is sort of like dripping away. The colors are a little washed out as it's going, and I feel like to have that level of the art reflecting these larger themes in the book is so exciting to hearing you talk about it as well.
Yeah, and with Heather's colors are a character in and of themselves. Yeah. Like when Christian said, like, I want these colors, I want this to be a little more experimental, and I didn't quite understand what he meant, but when I saw them, I was like, oh, okay, he wants to melt people's faces. That's what he meant to me. And it's not like anything I've ever seen before, and it adds. I mean, I think the Christian said this best, and I hope I'm paraphrasing it right. Christian is like, the realism of the work that I do sort of lends itself to more experimental things on top of it. It kind of gives it that space to be more experimental. And I didn't really have to tell Heather anything, other than I kind of feel bad giving her notes. I'm like, yeah, can you make her pants more purple? I mean, what do you do? I mean, like, it's just
your note is always more purple. Stick with it.
Yeah, there can always be more purple, but like, but she just took it into a direction I didn't expect, and that's kind of why. One of the reasons why I love working on this book is because I know what direction she's going, but it's always something that's very pleasantly surprising. And I think Christian did a very good job of picking somebody who would pleasantly surprise not only the creators but also the readers too.
Well, Christian, I'd love to hear you talk about that then a little bit. How much are you directing from the script versus seeing the art as it comes in, tailoring your script back appropriately because of that? What is the give and take like there?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm not adapting my script as I go, because really I feel like I've chosen well in the first place, right? So I chose, Patrick and Heather, and I knew, like peanut butter and jelly, put them together. I knew the tension and the excitement that would create. And I knew what Patrick could do with his kind of cinematic storytelling. And so he was kind of, I chose him because he already fit what I had in mind for the story. So really, it's not really, I haven't adapted the story to kind of fit his art or Heather's colours, because I already knew, I chose them for the script, if that makes sense. I mean, what I have done with the script is I mean, each issue we kind of, without giving too much away, we're going to kind of feature a different character. And what's been fun is like doing something different with each issue. Like, for instance, with the one that's coming out tomorrow, is a big fight sequence, which I remember Patrick sort of said to me he hadn't done such an extensive kind of choreographed fight sequence. And that's been fun, to sort of throw challenges at him and see what does a Patrick fight issue look like. And then issue 3 is a car chase. And we were talking about, French Connection and films of the 70s. We're not talking about Fast and Furious. We're talking about something really grimy and actually rooted in a bit of reality. And so it's been really cool to sort of write issues as a fan going, I want to see Patrick bring this to life. And I think if you write like that, and obviously I have the overarching story in mind, and I know where it needs to go, and I know all the emotional beats that we need to hear, and I know all the information that I need to hide in there and kind of like subtly drip and feed. But it's been really fun to go, I really want to see a so-and-so issue, or I really want to see a heist issue, or I really want to see almost different genres within the whole overarching story. And that's been really exciting.
You say you have a lot of the story sort of mapped out. I feel like the premise could really go on forever, like a vampire hunting down the people he's turned, or he gets killed, essentially. So what makes you take shape, and is this world sort of more expansive than the story you have in your head now?
Well, I think I mean, you're right. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, I had to be realistic, that I didn't want to kind of write a story that was like 30 issues long or 50 issues long, because you don't know whether the audience is. I mean, we've launched incredibly well, and already we're getting a lot of kind of interest and excitement. That's fantastic. But modern comics and create your own comics, you don't know where the peaks and troughs of the sales are, and I didn't want to be arrogant and thought, well, this is only my second book that I've written, and be like, okay, this is going to be an epic. and I felt that if we kind of carried on almost with like a Monster of the Week kind of structure, and it was just a Monster of the Week structure, month after month after month after month, far into the distance, you're going to lose some kind of attention from people. People are going to start to be like, okay, we're going to see the character, we're going to see this, you know, you're going to get the sense of the beats as much as we kind of shaking stuff up. So I knew I kind of didn't want that to just go on and on and on and on. Obviously, trying to talk around without giving anything away. And really, it's kind of important. It was important to me to kind of listen to the characters, and in this case, Atticus Sloane, and think, well, what is his story? What is he going to learn or not learn, and has he got to overcome? And so, really, that's kind of what we're following. Now, I've got an end to Atticus's story in mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he may or may not be able to come back. But it also doesn't mean that we won't, if we want to, explore other characters within this world, because I already have like multiple other characters and other storylines that we could follow. I mean, I think the way that I'm sort of looking at this book is similar to Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker's Criminal, in the fact that they've got this, you know, huge world of different kind of stories, and they kind of, sometimes you'll meet other characters that you've met before, and you know, if the readership was there, I could see us doing something like that we would go, and maybe in the next arc would be somebody completely different, and then maybe Atticus might pop up again. Who knows? I mean, the world is huge, and there's lots of opportunities for lots of exciting stories, I think.
We do have a question here over on YouTube. This is also for you, Christian. How do you think, you've been talking about this a little bit, but maybe you can talk about it more specifically. How do you think your experience as an artist has informed your writing?
It's made me less evil.
The ultimate goal.
I mean, I've kind of, you know, I've been drawing comics now for, you know, just shy of 20 years, and professionally just shy of about 12. And you know, and I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some amazing writers, so it's not like I've read scripts that have just been a nightmare to draw. I haven't. I've been really, really lucky. But I think because of that, it's also made me want to be also as good as I can be to kind of, you know, any artist that I'm working with. You know, Sammy before Patrick, and now Patrick, and even though, like, I don't want this book to look like I've drawn it. When I'm writing, I can kind of imagine. I know a panel will work because I can kind of see it in my style, perhaps. But I can see what would work, what wouldn't work. My God, the dog's trying to get in. Let me try the dog.
I feel like everyone has a dog.
Sorry, aren't my chihuahuas been triggered? Sorry about that.
Oh, that was very confusing.
I know. I was like, everyone's dogs are remotely.
Yeah, so it's basically just basically I'm hopefully more respectful of what an artist's job is and what an artist's job entails. I also know that you can't do the word "and" in a panel. You know, it can't be, we see this and this happens. It's just one thing. So I just, you know.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the less evil part you're talking about.
And I think it's just, you know, I know where the corners can be cut. I know what's important. I know what will be impactful. And it's just, you know, I mean, I think Patrick could probably answer this question better than I, maybe. But you know, I like writing. I like writing for other artists. So it's cool.
Patrick, over to you for the rebuttal.
Yeah, not as much of a rebuttal. I do, like, I know that you know, in the script, Christian will say things like, you know, Patrick, I trust you to do this, and that means
that's affirming. That's nice.
Yeah, he's like, you know, Patrick, don't worry about this, or like, I know you can handle this, but like, or sometimes he'll just leave something up to me. You know, like, if you want to do this, but you know, try this. Or he knows that, like, I'm not the fastest artist in the world, working on it though. And he knows, like, that that if I would like to have more opportunities to work for other publishers, that I need to be faster at it. And he'll, you know, while he's writing the script, he'll also give me, like, ideas and concepts to make it so that I can streamline my process. Like, you know, you can flip this shot, reuse this shot here, or you don't really have to do that. You know, you don't really have to draw an entire cityscape of Venezuela. You can just draw one building, the building that everybody's in. You don't have to do all that stuff. You know, I just have it in my head, you know, when I started working, is to show people what you're made out of all the time, because I could not have this job tomorrow. And there's somebody else who will work for cheaper, who will be a little bit faster, you know, than me. And so I have to sort of, you know, let go of that mentality. I've been working since 2009, and I don't really have to do that so much anymore. You know, sort of, I have to be more concerned about my self-preservation, and Christian's very cognizant of that. He'll say, like, okay, you know, let's do a 9-panel grid here, but you can reuse this one here, or you can repeat a shot here, you know. But I think the most important thing to me is he understands that, like, I'm capable, and that's it. Like, he'll just trust me to do things, and he'll have an idea in his head, and then what ends up on the page is something completely different. But hopefully it'll be more compelling and striking that what his initial idea was, after we've all contributed to it, after we've all put our effort and ideas into it. It's sort of like a song. When you have an idea for a song, and when it comes out, when the audience listens to it, you know, it's different than what you had in your head, you know. And so, but he knows that is part of the process too. And so, the thing I like about Christian is that he trusts that process.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about that, because I can't imagine it working the other way, where it's like there's this lack of trust between the writer and artist. Like, without naming names, have you been in situations where it's like at like, oh boy, we are not communicating, or like, how frustrating is that?
Yes, and very. But you know, luckily, you know, those things are rare. You know, those situations are rare. I get to draw comics for a living. It's not going to be too awful, you know. But I've also, you know, for the most part, you know, I've had writers, you know, like when I was working with Aliens and I was working with Chris Roberson, the first page of the Aliens comic, it read like, the xenomorph kills the colonists in some sort of visually interesting way. And that was it. And I was like, oh, I can write. It's all up to me now. But he's like, yeah, you're an artist. I mean, you've worked your butt off to get here, you know, so you're capable to do it. So, cool. But I think, you know, this is my first creator-owned project. So, you know, I don't know. I feel, you know, whenever I get a script and I start doing layouts, I feel like there's this tension I have where, like, can I change this layout a little bit? You know, I really don't want to step on anybody's toes, and I don't think it's my place to like want to change things. You know, so it's hard for me to give notes. It's hard for me to like want to, you know, add a panel to the layout and that kind of thing. You know, and so, but with this one, you know, I feel pretty comfortable being able to do that, because it's not the writer's story. It's not Christian's story. It's not my story. It's not Image Comics' story. It's our story. And what matters is the final product that comes out that people get to read. And it'll be better, or it'll be more, it'll be better than what you had in your head when it gets all finished, when everybody gets their chance to, like, you know, mold it with their own fingers. So, yeah, I have to say, honestly, it's probably been the most fulfilling project I've worked on, you know, to date. You know, so it just, because it feels like I have a sense of ownership with it, with everybody else too.
Awesome. Guys, that is great to hear. Love the book. Everybody should check out the second issue tomorrow, because it is so cool and so much fun. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with the rest of the series. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure chatting.
Thanks for staying up late, Christian.
I'm going to bed now.
Yeah, you're allowed. You're allowed.
Good night. Bye.
All right, there we go. Once again, the book is called Bloodstained Teeth from Image Comics. It's by Christian Ward and Patric Reynolds. It's a great book.
So good. Fun. I've been trying to get the bloodstains off my teeth for years at the dentist. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I have the same sort of thing, but a little more intense, because it's coffee stained teeth.
Yes, you are a horrifying coffee vampire.
Yes. Well, why don't we bring in our next two guests here? They are the creators of Sized Archie at Archie Comics.
The second bite we're talking about. All dental.
It's a it's a very toothy episode we've got here.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's sink our teeth into these comics.
Vin Lovallo and Ron Cacace, Bite-Sized Archie. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Oh my gosh. And Ron, you have a cat, so we've moved from our dog to cat side of the program. Is that
Cat crew, cat gang.
She didn't get an introduction, so she left, but it's totally understandable. Thank you so much for having us. We don't get to go on cam with each other so much these days. Vin and I used to work together and talk every day back when I was working at Archie, and now I'm somewhere else, but we get to interact here. This is fantastic.
No, that's great. Do you want me and Justin to leave?
Friends. Yeah, we'll get out of here.
Should we just leave? We'll leave.
All right,
have some fun, guys. Reconnect. Get personal.
Ron, I love what you did with your beard.
Oh,
wow.
You mean shaving it and then letting it grow back in and then shaving it again?
Yeah.
Cycle of life.
These are the kind of insider secrets you can only get on Comic Book Club, everybody. Let's talk about Bite-Sized Archie, which is so much fun. So you guys have been running this as a weekly, it comes out once a week, right? Mini comic, and then it just got collected and put out by Archie. One of the things that I love about it, beyond the fact that it's absolutely adorable with the art, is you guys embrace every single part of the Archie Comics mythos. It's not just, your classic Archie comics. It's also talking about the modern TV programming and movies and classic cartoons and riffs on other things. What was the original MO here? Were they just like, go crazy, do what you want, or did it morph into that slowly?
So then I'll set you up after I talk for a little bit. But we really wanted to just find a way to make Vin some money for drawing funny things, because I had been running the Archie Comics social media pages and sending out funny tweets here and there, and Vin would sometimes draw little sketches or animated versions of what I tweeted, and I was like, we need to do this regularly. We need to create content for you to regularly share on social media. And then I was like, well, let's just start off with a relatable comic, a relatable web comic with the Archie gang. And then it became go crazy, just do whatever you want. And once we started pushing them out and we started just doing wacky stuff, Vin was like, yeah, let's just push the envelope. Vin, talk about it.
I actually remember one of the first meme comics that we did together was Sabrina and Salem with the cat with the salad, whatever that meme is, when the lady's pointing at them angrily.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, so during my lunch breaks, I would sketch whatever I wanted. And one day I just said, oh, what would be a cool t-shirt design? I haven't really seen Archie in that chibi style much at all. Maybe for a variant cover we might have done that once or twice, but not consistently. So I did that one day. I showed Ron, and I think that that also helped get the gears turning. And I want to say by November 2020, Ron, you had made up that pitch. We had Archie and Jughead under the tree, and that was the first demo strip that we did. And from there we're almost at 80 strips now. It's crazy.
So cool. I feel there's a lot of we're talking about. There's a lot of very, very different Archie content out there in the world between Riverdale and everything else, which is exciting. But this is the closest to the Double Digest first, because those were always a sort of a mishmash of different styles, different artists, different ideas,
right.
Old-timey, new. So I think this really takes me back and sort of crystallizes the full Archie experience.
I wanted all of the characters to look as iconic as possible. What would the average reader, even if they don't know Archie, what should they see first? So when we first started, I had Archie in his classic sweater vest, as you see on the cover over there. But maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 strips in, I think I started changing the outfits. But overall, faces, hairstyles, all that stuff is pretty consistent with what you've seen in the 50s or the 60s comics. But then you got a character like Sabrina and Josie, and I kind of pulled inspiration from the old cartoons. So, there was a Sabrina TV show, obviously Josie and the Pussycats. So kind of pulling from maybe the Hanna-Barbera style, but, all keeping it familiar, but still kind of fresh in a way.
Ron, for you, I guess a lot of this stuff, and you certainly know this from your doing social days for Archie, but a lot of it feels very present and very current, which is fun. And I assume part of that is because of the weekly output. Are there things that feel like they were too much, things that potentially got shut down, or were like, no, that's way too memey even for what we're doing?
Yeah, there are stuff that there are memes that'll come across, my feed that I go like, I could do something here, and then I reconsider. There is one strip that I wrote that we may never see published, but we can talk about that maybe sometime down the line. But there's just like, there are those moments where you have to take like your best judgment and go like, do we need to step ourselves into this conversation, or should we just let this one slide by? Because although we reference memes and we're very current, we never want to seem like we're pandering, and we never want to seem like the old guys walking in the room with the skateboard saying, "How do you do, fellow kids?" Like, we don't want that vibe, because people see right through it, and it should feel like the person running the account wrote the story, and the person who's writing the comics and drawing the comics is the person that's talking to the fans, and it shouldn't just feel like somebody sending in a comic from disconnected from reality saying, I know what's going on. Like, it should feel like in the 60s and 70s, the fashions were always current, the topics were always being adapted into the stories. Now we could do that, but we could do it 2, 3, 4 weeks, right after something happens. We don't have to wait a couple months for it to go to press.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that I think really works about it as a fan of the television show Riverdale is I think you really straddle this line of, there are points where it feels like, okay, maybe we're getting close to these ships on the show, but it's not quite enough that you're going to sort of, at least as far as I've seen, rile up the shippers in a negative way. So again, how do you kind of straddle that line there? I want some personal advice.
I was going to say, exactly. What are you, boiling over there, Alex?
No, because I think like there's things like a couple of the strips is like Cheryl and Tony. It's clearly riffing on Shoney from the show, but it's not necessarily Shoney from the show. It's Tony from the comics, so it's a slightly different thing. They're not necessarily in a relationship. They're just kind of hanging out the way that they are in the comics. So again, how do you find that line there where you're riffing on that, you're capturing that shipper intensity, but not putting them off?
Yeah, that's a fantastic thing to talk about, because when I was running the social media pages, it was always something I was super, super aware of, right? It wasn't until like maybe March 2020 when there was that Riverdale episode where they did the fake Betty Archie kiss relationship thing, and I changed the social media handles to Barchie Comics, and then like literally like lit the fandom on fire and had like everyone yelling at each other. That was the like first time in like 7 years I like deliberately stoked the flames, and I almost regret doing that, because for like months later people would be like, do it again. I'm like, no, I'm not going to just repeat the same joke. We reprint comics all the time, but I'm not going to reprint my tweets. So what I try to do with Bite Sized is like put characters in each other's orbits, but not really classify them in any kind of particular relationship. Choni, I think, is great because that's representation that deserves to be seen. And I think those characters don't get often displayed in the ongoing stories so much. I mean, there's so many characters to handle. Archie, Betty, Veronica, Jughead, Reggie, like you're going through Cheryl and Tony and everyone else. It's a lot to keep going, but because we get to publish weekly, I get to throw Cheryl and Tony in there every so often, and it always really resonates with the audience. So I think not strictly defining relationships allows me to play around with, okay, Betty and Jughead are in this strip, but maybe they're just hanging out, like that's literally all it has to be. You let the shippers say, yes, this is canon, and then you let the non-shippers say, oh, they're just hanging out, and you kind of like sit on the fence and literally just watch people argue at each other, but nobody's mad at you. It's like the best outcome. And Vin will draw anything and make it amazing, so people will just take the little panels and make them their profile pictures, and it's just like everybody's happy, everybody's hanging out.
What a pot stirrer we have on our hands here. And honestly, what Alex is really asking is, will you guys make him a Shoney comic where they kiss? Because he's jonesing for it in a way that he's going to reach out. He's going to DM.
Yeah, I'll send you. This is not for the live show. I'll shoot DMs later. Yeah,
we've got one with Cheryl and Tony coming up that like pretty close. Like in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if did it get approved.
Yeah, today it got approved.
Okay, great.
Wow,
So
look at that! It's hot off the presses.
it's it has to do with that topic that was getting discussed a few weeks back, where people are like, I don't like this culture of text me when you get home. Like you should like you should drive your friends home and make sure they're safe. And so it has something to do with that, where it's like, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's basically like Cheryl and Tony in that situation where it's like, oh, text me when you get home. It's like, no, hold on. Like I will walk you home, and then I'm not going to. The rest of it goes from there.
Yeah,
give something for Alex to live for. Well, that brings up an interesting topic. Do you like watch Riverdale and sort of take note, like, oh, this is what maybe we could do a strip on this, or are you much more looking at memes and sort of what the internet is talking about and bringing that to Archie?
So it's a bit of both, and you know, I would be able to watch the episodes of Riverdale before they would air. So like I could sometimes, like if I knew Sabrina was going to show up in the Riverdale event, I was like, Vin, let's do something with Sabrina. Like let's have that week. You know, he did an amazing My Neighbor Totoro homage one week, and so we were able to use that GIF. Like we turned it into an animated GIF, and we were able to put it in with our Riverdale live tweeting, and like so we did take influence from events on the show. But for recent strips, I've really just been focusing on memes and like, hey, why haven't these characters done this thing together? Like, this is such a scenario that should have taken place. We have one where Archie's. We also tie in with like movies, TV shows, video game releases. So there's one coming up for the new Jurassic World movie where you know it's like the last final panel, two final panels show you like why Archie isn't doing well with his job interviews and has something to do with Jurassic World. So we look for like movies, video games, and world events that are fun to deal with.
One of the things that I really love about this, and we're kind of talking around this a little bit, is Archie Comics in my mind is almost kind of like the Muppets in a certain way. Like they should be embracing every single medium as much as possible, as modern as possible. Like, frankly, probably the best iteration of the Muppets, not to go too far afield, is probably when they were doing YouTube videos. Like like kind of at the dawn of YouTube, they came in, they started doing these videos, and it was perfect. It was the next iteration of it. This to me feels like the same sort of thing where like, this is nothing against Archie Comics, which I love, but you have the more modern Archie Comics that a lot are leading into horror, or you have the things that kicked off the Mark Waid run and continued that sort of straddle the line between Riverdale and Classic. And then you have the classic stuff, but here, this really does feel like what Justin was talking about, which is you are riffing off these current events. It's coming off in a really nice, fun way, and it does feel like, okay, these characters are timeless. They look like the old-timey characters. They're doing modern things, and that's one of the things that I think really works about it, which isn't necessarily a question so much as a compliment. So there you go.
We could all nod.
Thank you. I mean, Vin has done, he said it before, he takes the mind, like when you close your eyes, you picture a character. He takes that version of the character and somehow creates it in art. And so I'm always amazed when I send him a script and I'm like, do something with this. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, I get back artwork that I'm like, yeah, that was in my head, but now you've just created artwork. And now like in a few weeks, somebody's going to respond to it. Like that's the most amazing thing to me.
Yeah.
Is there, oh, go ahead, Vin.
Sorry. When you introduce like a new character that, well, I should say someone that hasn't been introduced to the bite-sized universe before. I remember when we first had Mid show up, and I think I kind of just did it and showed you the final strip, and you were like, oh my God, that's exactly what I had in my head. But like, I always look forward to that because it's fun to give those characters that, you know, shrunken down treatment because like I said, I do try to pull from the past, but still try to, you know, keep it as like modern as possible. Relevant, I should say.
Is there a character, Vin, that is more difficult to capture in the bite-sized world?
I'm looking at the cover now. I'm trying to think. I did struggle with Moose. I think I actually had him.
It's too big.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it was the proportions of it all because I had him standing next to Jughead, and this was when I was doing my layouts. Before I went to the final inks, I realized, oh, his head's actually going to get cropped if I do it this way. So it takes some, you know, rejiggering, but it was fine. But I do think he has a slightly different appearance in his, like when he first shows up. I forget which one. I think it's the one with the giant metal column, and it's actually Cosmo's. I don't know. He had a remote for it. It was his.
Yeah, you remember the monoliths that were all the rage back in like, you know, December 2020. We're like,
They're
what's
like-
going on with
yes.
these monoliths? Yeah.
Mhm.
People
But-
kept finding them, and it was like did we ever find out it was like a Twizzlers tie-in or something?
Could have been. But yeah, in his most current appearance, he looks a little different. But yeah, I guess maybe Moose. I don't know.
We got a suggestion here from the comments, or rather a demand, I guess. This is from John George. Says, all I'm saying is there isn't a middle-aged Jughead doing a rap. You've missed a trick. Are we going to see that at any point?
I don't think we really riffed off of the Return to Riverdale TV movie from the 90s,
really.
but I always got good responses when I made fun of that on our social media. Like I did one time, like this video where it shows the clip and then like I throw the whole VCR in the garbage. But yeah, I mean, we did a Crisis. We do these like multiple Jugheads. Like when Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness came out, we did one where Jughead's watching the movie and then the movie ends. It zooms out and there's like Jughead the Hunger, like the werewolf Jughead. There's the zombie Jughead, Riverdale Jughead, and they're all like watching the movie together. So it could have been an opportunity to bring in middle-aged Jughead. But maybe we could find a space for him, coming up.
Yeah.
It's not
I'm hoping that the last episode of Riverdale is just a remake of that TV movie. That would be
Why remake
perfection.
it? Just rerun it. We get it.
They should bring the cast back and
Yeah.
just have them play the same characters.
yes.
That's
Again,
my perfect Archie universes. Are those characters? Those versions.
That's your Archie.
Yeah, that's my
Perfect.
Archie.
So the book is out now. You are 80 strips in, though. So are you looking ahead to potentially a second collection at this point?
That's the dream, right? It happened once. It could happen again.
I would say
That's my non-answer.
the odds are pretty good that we'll get another one. The response has been pretty amazing to this first collection. We had a street fair event in my town, and my wife, who works at a daycare, got all the parents of the kids to like buy the book anytime they walk past the booth. So like, my husband wrote a book, come over here, like he'll sign it for you. So I was like, I sold out on like that first day, and I'm
nice.
looking forward to more events with Vin, where we can sell them in person, because really Archie is as much of a casual comic like product as anything else. It's like newspaper comics or even webtoons these days, where people who don't consider themselves comic book readers read Archie. And so we were able to come up with a way to get it to fans for free every week. And then if you liked it, we hope you support it and buy the print edition. And it turns out people do that. So it's really a great strategy, because you promote it weekly for a whole year, and then you get to say, hey, you like that stuff, like give us $13 and you can get a copy in print.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
So
love
cool.
it. It's so
fun.
great, guys. Congratulations on the book. Fingers crossed for the second one, and I can't wait to see that Shoney strip. See what happens.
Yeah.
After the show, Alex.
Yeah, we'll show
Oh,
you
after the show. After the show,
Yeah.
I'll
Just
slip into your
Venmo
DMs.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
All right, there we go. Once again, it's called The Bite-Sized Archie, Ron Cacace and Vin Lovallo, and it is super, super fun, so definitely check it out.
Yeah.
And folks, we're going to move on with our next section, which is my favorite section because you all make it up. It is your audience questions.
I'll intro.
And for audience questions, all you got to do is drop a question and ask a question over here on Crowdcast, or drop a question over in the YouTube comments. Here are the two places to do that. Oh boy, there we go. Ugh. Before we get into that, though, what are you drinking, Justin?
Great question. I was drinking a little Coney Island beach beer, which is nice, but I'm about to open up some wine, some sort of Sicilian orange wine that I found.
think that's tomato sauce. I think you're.
Oh yeah.
tomatoes.
Oh
yeah.
good. I'm gonna love it. Vodka sauce. Vodka
Yeah,
sauce. Right?
there you go.
That's
what
the
it
next thing. I can't believe Pete has a vodka sauce.
is. Yeah, vodka,
ultimate.
a little vodka. Well, I'm still working away on this Charleston Fizz. This is a very
Wow.
big glass. Why don't we get into some questions here? We got one from Stray Bullet. Out of the three hosts, who would make the best vampire?
The best vampire? The best meaning the most successful for drinking blood.
Yeah, I guess so.
Tough call.
I don't know. I feel like you'd be pretty good.
I'd be a good vampire. Why? Because
Yeah.
I'm like immortal, sneaky.
No, because you like talking to people, and also when you talk to people, you tend to like put your hand on their shoulder and kind of pull them in close.
That's right. I'm
That
an
closes the
intimate-
difference, their distance to their neck.
You
just
mean
get run.
you'd be a bad vampire because you're too far away to get your teeth in? You're
Yeah,
swinging a
they'd
miss?
see me coming. They'd see me coming. They'd stake me immediately.
A lot of comments lighting up. Justin's a classically trained vampire. True. Justin has a little vamp vibe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be Alex, Pete hunting him, and Justin is Pete's whistler. I'll take it. I'm the Chris Christopherson. If anything, Pete is the whistler. Pete is 100% the whistler.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to check in with him on
He
this
has
next week.
whistler energy in every aspect of his life. He's older. He's gruff. He's like, let's just go do this thing.
Yeah. You'd be like, okay, it's time we got to finally kill Alex. We got to take him down and take care of his vampire coven. And Pete, you'd look around and Pete would be gone. And he'd be like, comes back in 20 minutes later with a meatball sub. It's like, I'm sorry, I was hungry. It was lunch.
Yeah. I also killed Alex. So in this analogy, Alex is the Steven Dorff, I'm the Blade, and Pete's the whistler. I
don't
think
know.
we're a little
I got to
off.
be honest. I don't know if this is a 1-to-1. I don't think this is a 1-to-1.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's definitely not.
This from Kevin. What are some of your favorite short form comics, i.e. ones with a bunch of stories, blackouts each issue?
Ooh. So many of the anthologies we talk about. DC loves making anthologies where they sort of hit a bunch of stuff, whether it's built around an event or like a holiday. So those are a little bit maybe what you're talking about, Kevin.
This is not exactly what Kevin is talking about, but a comic that I feel like has gotten erased from the collective memory is Wednesday Comics, which was so good and such a big deal. If you don't remember it, was the oversized, newspaper-sized comic strip collection that DC put out for, I don't know, was it a couple of years or was it just a couple of months? I don't even
It was
remember.
one full year, I think. I think they did 12
and it
issues.
had amazing creative teams on it. So good. I would love to revisit that one again at some point.
Yeah,
was
I
awesome.
have them. I mean, they're not holding up well in my comic book collection because they, like old newspapers, they turn yellow. But it was such a good event, and truly, it's maybe the greatest artist and writer teams that they've had ever. Just like they pulled everybody in on that.
Yeah. That was awesome. We got a question here over on YouTube. This is from David Quinley. You think a live-action Submariner work? So this is potential spoilers here. I don't know. I don't have this confirmed, but there was a lot of chatter over the weekend when reportedly some details leaked about Black Panther 2, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. If you don't want to know potential spoilers, turn away, but this is from...
This is very rumory.
Yes, this is from the sketchiest parts of the internet. But the rumors that the Submariner, Namor, and the Atlanteans in some form were going to be the villains or the antagonists in Black Panther 2 is going to be Wakanda versus Namor. The new rumor is that so that people won't confuse Namor with Aquaman, who comes from Atlantis, they've changed it from Atlantis to, I believe it was a Mayan city. Is that correct? Did you see that?
I don't know what the actual... I just saw that they're not going to do Atlantis. I was like, not a lot of other underwater cities to draw on.
Yeah, there is a Mayan city that is waterlogged, I guess is the way that I'd put it. Like there's a lot of boats and other things and lakes around it. So that's what they're kind of riffing off of there. But regardless, so that's where this is based on. What do you think, though? Can Submariner work in live action?
I mean, I think so. I wonder if they'll just do away with the wings and have him be basically Aquaman, but meaner, I guess. I mean, I'm curious. At first sort of flush, it does feel like a weird choice for Black Panther 2 to have it be all about some very intense comic booky things. I think the first Black Panther was such a success because it was like about Wakanda and really like showing us that culture, exploring it, the secret society that was Wakanda, and to have it be on fully like, let's get these underwater guys, feels a little strange. But on second thought, if Wakanda was a city that was kept secret from the world, and so is this Atlantis replacement city, that sort of tracks, and maybe there's like a duality there that they want to explore. So maybe it could be cool. I just feel like they won't hit on the same storylines that we get in the Black Panther versus Namor stuff in the comics.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of stuff they can play with there, potentially. You know, particularly we left off with Wakanda broaching itself into the outside world. We've very traditionally had Namor pop up out of the water and be like, yo, stop polluting my water. Now I'm going to destroy the earth type thing. So maybe that's how they bring them in conflict in some way. I do like the Secret City.
Is that it has to be different than Aquaman.
Yeah.
From a storyline point of view. So I feel like something different. Yeah, it can't just be like.
They live underwater. What's different? Like, pitch me another story here.
People?
Yeah. Black Panther eats a fish. And he's like, oh,
that's my friend.
Yeah, you ate my friend. You ate Barry.
Oh, yeah, maybe he's like, I want to try, I'm sick of fish. It's like when you have too much sushi and you want to like try like.
The Jeremy Piven thing where he had too much mercury.
Jeremy Piven. Now that's a good Namor right there. He's a famously well-liked person. Let's get him in a movie.
All right, why don't we move on to another controversial topic? This is from Josh H. Pineapple on pizza. Yes, maybe, hell no. Are there any exotic pizza toppings that you enjoy?
I'll eat anything on a pizza.
Yeah, same here.
I'm loose. Let's get.
Wow, this is great. Pete isn't here to disagree and be like, no, pizza is just
it's
a raw
just crazy
slice
though.
of bread.
Pete's like, they're only like, there's only a couple types of good pizza, because I think he does have that take. But then he's like, but my favorite thing to eat is garbage plates, where you literally put anything and everything on top of a plate. But I mean, I wouldn't order pineapple on pizza. If that was what we were eating, I'm here for it. I
would. My wife and I sometimes order pineapple onion pizza. Surprisingly good.
That's not a favorite.
No, it's not a favorite. I'll tell you the one thing that I won't order.
That sounds like an accident that you're too like proud to admit you messed up.
Well, I used to. So in college, I feel like I've told this story on the show before, but in college there was a calzone place that was very popular called DP Dough, and people would order from there. And so my friends and I decided, what we're going to do is we're going to make up a calzone and order it enough so they're going to be like, wow, this is really popular, and put it on the menu. So whenever we went over somebody's house, we would order the same calzone from DP Dough and give it different names so that they would think different people were ordering it. It was becoming really cool. And it was a pineapple onion pesto calzone. And at a certain point, I ate enough of them that I was like, this is good.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Did you get it on the menu?
Nope.
Is that the salad?
Nope. Just ate a lot of them. That's all.
For Straight Bullet on the comments, Justin's from upstate. Do you ever have cold cheese pizza? Meaning just a cold piece of pizza?
No, what they do is they take pizza and then they take shredded cheese and put it on top of the pizza, but they don't heat it up. So it's just a pile of shredded cold cheese on top of hot
What part
pizza.
of upstate does that? That's not. That's lazy.
Yeah.
Put it back in the oven. Why would you want that? Cold cheese on hot pizza?
I don't know. I don't get it.
I've never heard of that. That must be from like a Pete part of upstate where they eat anything, garbage.
We got one last question here. This is another Black Panther question. Are you still interested in a Black Panther movie without Black Panther?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bummer. It's we've talked about this extensively. I mean, truly, Chadwick Boseman's death is a death that everyone felt across the world. Specifically for this movie, it was like, how are they going to do this? And it's sad, but I think they will do it. Like, I think it's possible. The Black Panther, the movie, did a great job of having it be about the place, about the people in the place, not just the singular character.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we're going to have another Black Panther or Black Panthers by the end of the movie. Obviously, there's been some issues with Letitia Wright before all of that came out. I think everybody expected, yeah, sure, he's going to be the new Black Panther, just the way that she is in the comics. As it is, maybe we'll have her, and also M'Baku will be a Black Panther as well. It sounds like reportedly his part has gotten beefed up in the movie. But they'll figure it out. And Josh A says, what if they call it Wakanda Forever? They are. The movie is called Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So I think the idea here is not, like you're saying, just about Black Panther, but about all the characters coming together. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation they're in.
It's tough. You can't do like a one-for-one replacement. You have to like dig deeper than that because the character has more depth. Chadwick Boseman as a presence was too big. So I think they're going to be smart about it, and I think they're going to find it.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. And folks, that is it for your audience questions. Whoop, whoop. And now, normally, we would turn it over to trivia with Pete LePage. As you probably know, Pete is not here. No. So we're not going to do trivia instead. And unfortunately, this is becoming a semi-regularity. I think we're going to do a donation, if it's okay with you guys. We're going to donate to Everytown this week. There's been, as you may have heard, not to take it too seriously on the news, some horrible, horrible gun violence that's happened recently. I donate regularly to Everytown anyway. They're great. They go out. They push for gun control laws and harder about it. So I'm going to take the $25 that we would normally give this week and give that over to them to help that cause a little bit.
Great.
So there you go. As we all know, though, new comic books coming out all the time. Justin, what are you looking forward to that's coming out this week?
Ooh, we got a lot of stuff. I mean, legitimately, Bloodstained Teeth is one that I can't say that we have read it, and it's very, very good and very fun. But I want to throw it out to Ice Cream Man number 30. And I'll also speak for Pete here. DC versus Vampires Hunters #1 is a book that's great. The DC versus Vampires sort of sub-universe in DC Comics has been one of the most exciting places that we've been getting stories from in the DC universe, and this book is another just great example of that. So I would definitely recommend those. I know Pete was a huge fan of that issue as well.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to Unnatural Blue Blood #1 from Image Comics. This is a sequel to Mirka Andolfo's bonkers series about a world where animal people are not allowed to fall in love with each other, and then they kind of do anyway. But beyond the art being great, it had some really surprisingly deep things to say about racism throughout the first run of the book. So I'm very curious to see if the sequel holds up in the same way. We're going to be talking about all of those in our Stack podcast that comes out in the Comic Book Club feed, as well as its own dedicated Stack feed, Wednesday at 9 a.m. And folks, that is it for this week's show. Next week, we are going to have Gary Duffner is going to be here to talk It's Monkey Time and Big Story podcast. I want to give a shout out to our guests this week, Christian Ward and Patric Reynolds. Don't forget to check out Image Comics Bloodstained Teeth. Issue #2 is out on stands tomorrow. Ron Cacace and Vin Lovallo. Check out the Bite-Sized Archie collection that is out everywhere now. So much fun. So good. A couple of other podcasts from us. You can check out the Doom Room, our Doom Patrol podcast, rolling out weekly. Or you can get all 34 episodes by subscribing to our Patreon. Riverdale After Dark, a Riverdale podcast coming out after those episodes air on Sundays. Marvel Vision, our Marvel podcast. We're aiming to roll out a couple of things in the hiatus, but we'll be coming back with Miss Marvel for sure. Patreon.com/Comic Book Club. Support this podcast and all the podcasts we do. Subscribe on Apple, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice. At Comic Book Live on Twitter, Comic Book Club Live on Instagram, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, good night.
Have a great holiday weekend. Big content weekend. Keep your eyes straight. Look, watch it. Check it out.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, folks.